today I woke up and it snowed outside. So there's a little bit of snow on the ground. So that's very cold, but it's kind of magical for Christmas time, right? So today I thought we could try to start a Christmas story. Now this is an old story. And it's not very famous, but the authors are famous. So it's the Brothers Grimm. So the Grimm fairy tales are really famous. I think they wrote Rapunzel, the girl with the very long hair. I think they wrote Cinderella. But these two brothers wrote some of the most famous fairy tales, like a long time ago. And this is one of their stories that's kind of about Christmas, not a lot about Christmas, but it's about the feelings of Christmas and how you should be nice to each other and take care of each other. So let's get into it. Grimm's Fairy Tales by Jacob Grimm and Wilhelm Grimm. So there's a collection of fairy tales from these two brothers. It's Grimm with two M's. Grimm with one M means like bad, scary, unhappy. So remember that it's with two M's for their name. Because if it's one M, a Grimm fairy tale, that's a kind of like a sad story. But some of their fairy tales are a little bit grim. Let me double check my spelling. Yeah. Grim with one M means like a little bit creepy, a little bit scary, like kind of bad luck. So some of their fairy tales can be a bit grim. Like Cinderella, if you see the movie, it's kind of happy and pretty, but the original version is kind of grim, like a little bit scary. Like creepy stuff happens. But anyways, this one is not grim. This is a nice, cute story that's about Christmas and about being nice to each other. So, this is called The Elves and the Shoemaker. I'm using green because we're talking about Christmas. So, let's see. Elves and the Shoemaker. Now, what are those? Let's see. I will type on the side and copy and paste stuff to share it, if you know what I'm talking about. So, what is an elf? So, elves is the plural for the word elf. And an elf is a kind of creature. It's not real. It's they look like people, and usually they have pointy ears. And so elves are in lots of different kinds of stories, and there are many kinds of elves. So one is an elf. That person is an elf. If there are many, there are elves with a V. Elf, elves. So the sound changes a little bit, if you can hear that. Now, an elf, let's see, I don't want to mess things up. An elf can be in a fantasy story. A fantasy story is something with magic. Like if you've seen Lord of the Rings, there are elves in those stories. Lord of the Rings is 魔戒. There's a ring with magic, and elves are the tall people with long ears, and they live for like 1,000 years. So that's an elf, but a fantasy elf. For Christmas, an elf is a little different. And let's see. What's that elf's name? His name is... Oh, whatever. Here are some elves from the Lord of the Rings. Dun, dun, dun. Ooh. So you can see they have pointy ears. Often they have blonde hair. In Lord of the Rings, they often have long blonde hair. And they live for like 1,000 years. And elves have some magic powers. But we're talking about Christmas elves. A Christmas elf is different. This guy is called the Elf on the Shelf. He's famous he's a popular character for Christmas time in the United States, where people will put this little elf on a shelf or somewhere in their house, and kids will figure out what did the elf do last night. So for Christmas, the elves make toys to help Santa Claus. And so we're talking about Christmas elves, okay? Not the elves from Lord of the Rings. Okay, I'm talking too much. So, the elves and the shoemaker. And now, another way to say a shoemaker is a cobbler, which is a kind of an old word, but you might hear it once in a while. So, a cobbler, a shoemaker, literally someone who makes shoes. Okay. Coffee time. Give me a second. So let's get started. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest. But still, he could not earn enough to live upon. And at last, all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. So, there was once a shoemaker. Here why are we using once? There was once a shoemaker. Here once is like at one time. Or at some time is at one time, like once, at some time. So we don't know when this story is happening, but whatever. At some time, there was a shoemaker. Sorry. I still have a bit of a cold, so it's hard to talk sometimes. So at some time, at one time. And this is kind of like the classic start of a story, which would be once upon a time. That would be even more classic a start. Once upon a time, there was a shoemaker. There once was a shoemaker, whatever, who worked very hard and was very honest. What does honest mean? Honest means he tells the truth. It also means that he's a good person. So, tells the truth is the standard meaning. Okay, good. You can see that. You can also mean like it's a little bit like works hard. They're a good person. So here it's more like he's a good person, not just that he tells the truth. So who worked very hard and was very honest. But still, he could not earn enough to live upon. So here we're putting still. It's kind of like anyways, or even though, we're using it differently than even though, but it's kind of that same idea. He worked very hard, but still he could not earn enough to live upon. So like even though he worked very hard, he could not earn enough. The still is for emphasis. It's making the but even stronger. But you could just say, but he could not earn enough. Remember, earn means make money, and then earn enough to live upon. So, using the word upon here is old-fashioned. It's old style, but you should be able to understand. So earn means make money or get money. I'll do it like this. Whatever, like that. Earn means to make money, and then earn enough to live upon, meaning earn enough money to live comfortably. Why do we have the word upon? Because let's say this is your money, and you can imagine he's sitting upon the money and living. So, ka-ching. You're living upon the money. You can think like, imagine you're sitting on the money to try to live, if that makes sense. He could not earn enough to live upon. So they don't have enough money, or he doesn't have enough money to live comfortably, even though he works hard. At last, all he had in the world was gone. So, at last. For now, modern English, at last is kind of like you've been waiting for something to happen. But here, this like old way to use it is kind of, I would say, in the end. So, in the end, all he had in the world was gone. So that means he worked hard, but it wasn't enough to get any money. And in the end, everything was gone. All he had in the world was gone. So here, all is like everything. All that he had. So everything that he had in the world was gone. Gone means it's disappeared, right? So he works hard, but oh, it's hard to live. Poof, everything's gone. Oh, poor guy. Save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. Now, this is tricky, but this is an old way to use the word save. And what it means is except for. Okay, so think about that. So all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough, blah, 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 blah. So except for some leather. Let's flip these words around. So flip leather and enough. I'll use a different color. So here, this is not a mistake. It's just old style, old-fashioned style writing. But in modern English, we would flip these words. And let's write it. Let's write it out. Except for. My brain is turned off. I'm sorry. No, that's right. That's right. We'll get there eventually. Let's flip these, and then I'll write it out because I'm going crazy. Just enough leather to dot, dot, dot. So, save is the same as except for. This is old style, so for modern English, we can flip the words. So, except for just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. Now, that's a lot easier, right? So, everything was gone except for just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. So, the way it's written, at last, all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. So the old style would be, right, just something enough. So you don't have much, but you have enough to do one more thing. So in modern English, we'd say just enough. Like, let's say I want to make coffee. It's like, oh, my coffee is almost gone, but I have just enough coffee grounds to make one more cup of coffee. Okay? So the old style would be just coffee grounds enough to make one more cup of coffee. Okay, anyways. Do you have any questions? If you have questions, put it in the chat. So, there was once a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest. But still, he could not earn enough to live upon. And at last, all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. So he has a little bit of leather, and it's enough to make one more pair of shoes. And hopefully he can sell those shoes and make some money to have food for tomorrow. Keep going. Then he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to his work. His conscience was clear and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. Let's pause for a second. Then he cut his leather out. So what does it mean if he is going to cut out his leather? Well, leather, remember, leather is cow skin. So it's dry cow skin that you use for clothing. I'll go back to green for Christmas. So he's using this, like, let's say a square of leather, and he cuts it to be the shape of the shoe. Okay? But he doesn't put it together. He just cuts the leather. So he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day. Here, make up, I would say in modern English, put together. So he cuts the leather into pieces, and then the next day he will put them together to make a shoe. Okay? So he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to his work. Here, it means that he is meaning to. Blah, blah, blah. So he is meaning to rise early in the morning. Now, before I move on, I'll come back to meaning in a second. Rise means get up. So what does it mean if he was going to rise early? Well, he's going to wake up early in the morning to his work. To do his work is what I would say. So remember, the story is correct. but it's a little bit old-fashioned. So I'm changing it to what I would say now instead of like 100 years ago when they wrote this story. Or I'm not sure when they wrote this story. Okay, anyways. So he cut his leather out all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to work. So this is past tense, so he was meaning to. He was meaning to rise early in the morning to work. That means here the word meaning is like the word intending or planning or wanting to. All of these words are okay. Meaning means like what he is going to do. So it's not a very common way to use meaning right now, like this sentence, I mean, but that's what it means. So if someone is meaning to do something, that means what they're planning to do, what they're intending to do, what they want to do. So he wants to wake up early in the morning to get to work. Okay? His conscience was clear and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So his conscience was clear. Ooh, this is a tricky one. A conscience is how you feel about yourself. Like, it's your conscience means your mind, the way you're thinking. And so your conscience means how you feel about, am I good or am I bad? And if your conscience is bad, that means maybe you feel like you hurt someone or you did something bad. But if your conscience is clear, that means there's nothing you're thinking about. You're not worried about something. You don't feel like you did anything bad. Does that make sense? Let's see. It's an inner feeling or voice as a guide to the rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. That's very difficult to understand, but it's a feeling on the inside of, did I do something right or did I do something wrong? That's what your conscience is. So it's the way you think about yourself. So his conscience was clear, meaning that he wasn't worried. He's like, yeah, I think I worked hard. I'm honest. Trying to be a good guy. So he's not worried about things. And his heart light. So his heart was light. That means you might have heard the phrase, a heavy heart. This is kind of the same thing as what we talked about before. A conscience is your feelings. Your heart is about your feelings. So if someone has a heavy heart, that means they're very sad. You feel like your heart is heavy. It's pulling you down. You feel bad. So heavy heart is a pretty common phrase. Like, with a heavy heart, I tell you that blah, 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 and then tell you some bad news. But his heart light is not common. Like, I don't hear this often, but if you know heavy heart, a light heart, you can, we say something, sorry. His heart light is not very common, but light-hearted, is an adjective we use sometimes. It's not very common to say his heart was light. That's not common, but you could talk about something as light-hearted. meaning it's kind of fun and easygoing. How did I put fun, easygoing is what lighthearted is. So you could call something, oh, it's a lighthearted movie. It's a fun and easy, happy story. So back to this guy. His conscience was clear and his heart light amidst all his troubles. Amidst, again, is an old-fashioned word, but it's like among. I think we talked about among before, meaning in the middle. So in the middle of all his troubles. So he has many, many troubles, many problems around him. But in the middle, his heart is light and his conscience is clear. So he's feeling good even though all these problems are around him. Okay. His conscience was clear and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. He went peaceably to bed. Again, old-fashioned. Peacefully is what I would use. So he went peacefully to bed. And then I would put this before went. He peacefully went to bed. Or at the end. He went to bed peacefully. So the adverb is in a different place, but you can figure out what it means. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven. Cares means things you care about or things you worry about. So this is kind of like his worries, or not exactly worries, the things he's thinking about. He left them to heaven. So he's like, it's not my problem anymore. Heaven can figure it out. I'm working hard, but I still have no money. Heaven, you can help me. And heaven is where God lives. So he's like, I'm trying my best. God can help me if he wants to, but I'm not going to worry about it. So soon he fell asleep. Okay, now we go on to the next part. In the morning, after he said his prayers, he sat himself down to his work. When, to his great wonder, there stood the shoes already made upon the table. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd thing happening. He looked at the workmanship. There was not one false stitch in the whole job. All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. Okay, this is a little bit tricky, but good practice. In the morning, after he had said his prayers. So he wakes up in the morning, and he says his prayers. Oh, Lord, please help me, blah, blah, blah. I don't pray, but some people do. Maybe you pray before going to bed, or you pray in the morning. But for me, I wake up and have coffee. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, he sat himself down to his work. It's like, okay, time to start making those shoes. When, to his great wonder, so wonder here is like surprise. So, to his surprise, or to his great wonder, that means he's surprised by something. He goes, huh? Wow. There stood the shoes already made upon the table. So, what happened? Last night, he cut his leather out So he cut the leather and put it flat on the table. And then he woke up in the morning and all that leather was made into shoes. So there stood the shoes. You can use the word stand. Stood is the past tense. Stand means that it's just there. It's on a table. So my coffee cup is standing next to me. Often it's about a person standing, but you could talk about a thing. So the shoes stood on the table. So there stood the shoes already made. So this is like already. It's like already, like they are already finished, but it's also like they're already made. They're made and they're ready to use. So 2 words is an old-fashioned way. We would put it together as already. They're already made upon the table. Upon is the same as on. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd happening. This is an old-fashioned way to write. Again, he knew not means he didn't know what to say or think. So he didn't know what to say or think. The old man, or the good man, knew not what to say or think. What do I say? What do I think? At such an odd happening. Odd means strange. Oops, bad spelling. Strange. Okay. So he's shocked and confused. Like, what the heck? Where did these shoes come from? He looked at the workmanship. Workmanship. Like, the ship, the word ship, ship at the end of a word means like how good something is. Friendship is how much are you a friend. Relationship, how much are you related. Workmanship, how good was the work done by the person, the man or woman. So the workmanship is like how well is it made. So he looked at the workmanship. Look at these shoes. There was not one false stitch in the whole job. A stitch is when you sew. Sew one time. So when you sew something like sewing clothes or sewing a shoe, you go up and down and up and down. If you go down and up one time, that's one stitch. So there was not one false stitch. So there wasn't even one bad stitch. False is an old way to say bad. So I wouldn't say false now, just bad. There wasn't one bad stitch in the whole job. So it's a perfectly made shoe. All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. So all was so neat. Neat is like clean and really well done. And true is, I wouldn't use true like this, but what they mean is perfect. So I know this is tricky because I told you, oh, we don't use false like this. We don't use true like this. But I think you know true and false. So you can guess what it means. A false stitch. Well, false is like no, so it must be bad. Always neat and true. True is like yes, so it must be good. So true is like perfect or good. Okay? All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. A masterpiece. This is a good word to know. It's a piece made by a master, meaning that it's an amazing piece of work. Or art. An amazing piece of work or an amazing piece of art. And this is a really common word. Let's take away the word work and just say an amazing piece of art. It's a beautiful thing. So let's say you're talking about a song. This song is one of the best songs ever. Like it's a Beethoven song. It's like, oh, this is a masterpiece. Or a famous painting. Like you go see one of Van Gogh's paintings and you say, wow, this painting is a masterpiece. So it's this like incredible piece of art. Okay? So what happened in this paragraph? Sorry, we're going slow, but that's because I want you to learn every word. Well, he cut the leather, he put it on the table, he went to bed, he woke up, and there are these perfect shoes on the table. And, well, later we'll find out that he can sell these shoes and make money, and it saves him a lot of time, and we'll see what happens. So, let's read this one more time, and then we can call it a day for now, okay? So, the Elves and the Shoemaker. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest. But still, he could not earn enough to live upon. And at last, all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. Then he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to do his work. His conscience was clear and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peaceably to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, he sat himself down to work, when, to his great wonder, there stood the shoes already made upon the table. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd happening. He looked at the workmanship. There was not one false stitch in the whole job. All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. So, that's the beginning of the Elves and the Shoemaker. As usual, we're taking it slow because I want to talk about each sentence one by one. Hopefully not too slow for you, but there's a lot to learn, a lot to practice. So, let's stop here for today. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something new. I wonder who made the shoes. Well, could it be elves? So, let's stop here. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you next week where we can continue this cute little story. So have a good night and have a good week. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.